Okay, we are on to object pronouns, direct and indirect, or pronomi oggetto diretti e indiretti. And believe it or not, we have made it to the top of our grammar pyramid. Yay! So we have made it through all of these steps here, and we are on the final step of our pyramid. So that is awesome. You're doing fantastic. And we have just this last section to go before we get into how to build sentences. Okay, object pronouns. What is an object pronoun? An object pronoun, un pronome oggetto, is the tiny word that replaces the person, place, or thing that's the object noun of the sentence, the noun that receives the action. Okay, so what is the difference between a subject pronoun, which we went over way at the beginning of the unit, and an object pronoun? So the subject pronoun replaces the noun performing the action. The object pronoun replaces the noun receiving the action. Okay, so as we saw before, most of the subject pronouns were like io, tu, lui, lei, noi, loro. Okay, so that usually is the person doing the action. Okay, now we're talking about the person or place or thing that is receiving the action. Okay, so that is the big difference here. How many types of object pronouns are there? There are many types of pronouns, but only two types of object pronouns. Okay, so we have direct and indirect. Direct versus indirect object pronouns. Okay, first let's talk about the differences. So what is the difference between direct and indirect object pronouns? A direct object pronoun, un pronome oggetto diretto, replaces the noun that directly receives the action. It answers the question who or what. So in our example, we have Luigi gives the book to Paolo. Luigi gives it to Paolo. Okay, so as you can see, it is the direct object pronoun, which is replacing the noun, which is the book. Okay, it's so that you don't have to keep saying the book, the book, the book every time you're referring to it. You can just say it. An indirect object pronoun, un pronome oggetto indiretto, replaces the noun that indirectly receives the action. It answers the questions to whom or for whom and is usually a person. Okay, so in our example here, Luigi gives the book to Paolo. Luigi gives the book to him. Okay, so in this case, it's the same sentence here, but Paolo is replaced by to him. Okay, to Paolo is replaced by to him. So him being the indirect object pronoun, okay, because he is indirectly receiving the action. Okay. Okay, direct object pronouns. What are the direct object pronouns? So the direct object pronouns, I pronomi oggetto diretti, are as follows. Okay, so I have a little chart here. Okay, so if you're if you are talking about the first person singular, you're going to use me. Okay, second person singular is ti. Third person singular can be lo or la, and it's capitalized if it's the formal lei here. In the plural, we have chi, vi, li for masculine loro, and lei for feminine loro, or for the formal loro. Okay, for example, Luigi gives the book to Paolo. We'll stick with our example here going forward. So Luigi dà il libro a Paolo. Luigi gives it to Paolo. Okay. Luigi lo dà Paolo. And in this case, il libro is replaced by the direct object pronoun lo. Okay, so because il libro is third person singular and it's a masculine noun, okay, il libro, we replace it with lo. Okay, so instead of Luigi dà il libro a Paolo, it becomes Luigi lo dà Paolo. Okay. You'll get a little bit more familiar with this as we go forward, but I just want to explain what a direct object pronoun is, and then we're going to go over what a indirect object pronoun is, and then we're going to talk about the differences, and then we'll talk about how to use them together in a sentence, okay? So, how to use direct object pronouns in a sentence. So if our original sentence is, in English, I send the letter to David. Okay, so in English, we have the letter is replaced by it. Okay, it being the direct object pronoun. Okay, in Italian, we have io mando la lettera a Davide. Io la mando a Davide. Okay, so as you can see, it changes order a little bit between English and Italian. And that's where I think it becomes very confusing for people because you put it before the verb. Okay, so la lettera is replaced by la because it is a singular, it's a singular third person pronoun. So that's replaced by la because it's feminine. Okay, and we place it before the verb. Okay, io la mando a Davide. Okay, and this is when you're only using a direct object pronoun in a sentence. Okay, no indirect object pronouns in this sentence. We'll talk about how to use them together in a bit. Indirect object pronouns. What are the indirect object pronouns? Okay, so the indirect object pronouns, I pronomi oggetto indiretto, are as follows. So we have me, ti, gli. Okay, so lui gets replaced with li. Lei is replaced with lei. Okay, and lei are the same here. One's capitalized. And then over here on the plural side, we have ci, vi, and loro or li. Okay, I'm showing you both of these, loro and li. However, technically, loro is the correct pronoun for the third person plural and is placed after the verb. Okay, all these other ones are placed before the verb, but loro comes after the verb. However, li is commonly used in its place. Okay, so it's very common to hear people use li before the verb, just like all these other ones, instead of loro after the verb. Okay, so that's why I'm showing you both of these, but technically loro is the correct way to, is the correct indirect object pronoun for loro. Okay, but like I said, this is very commonly used. So for lui or loro, they're going to use li a lot of the time. Okay. Note that the first person and second person object pronouns are the same for both direct and indirect object pronouns. Okay, so basically everything above this line here is the same for both direct and indirect object pronouns. The differences are here in the third person. Okay, so either it's going to be lo and la for the direct object pronouns, or li and lei, or li and loro, okay, for the plural. For example, we have our example again. So Luigi gives the book to Paolo. Luigi dà il libro a Paolo. Okay, so a Paolo gets replaced by li in this case. So li comes before the verb dà. So Luigi gives the book to him. Luigi gli dà il libro. Okay, so to Paolo becomes li, which is the indirect object pronoun being used. So because Paolo is the third person singular and it's masculine, okay, we use li. And again, we put it before the verb. Okay. If you don't get this, if this isn't super clear yet, we have a few more slides to go through, so just stick with it, and hopefully it'll become more clear as we move on, okay? Continued. Is there another form of indirect object pronouns? Yes. So you can also put more emphasis on indirect object pronoun by using one of the following after the verb. Okay, so before we were talking about using me and t, okay, for example, in the first ones here. So instead of me and t, we would use a me and a te. Okay, a me, a te, a lui, so to him, a lei or a lei, to her or to you formal. Then we have a noi, so to us, a voi, to you all, or a loro for all of these here, okay? For example, is Pasquale giving the book to me or to you? So the emphasis is on to me or to you, not on the book. So Pasquale dà il libro a me o a te? So you see how there's more emphasis put on the indirect object pronouns here by using a me or a te. Another example, Luigi is giving his car to me, not to him. Okay, so we have Pasquale dà la sua macchina a me, non a lui. Okay, so the emphasis is on these words here. So a me, non a lui, to me, not to him. And finally, I want to give this rose to you. Voglio dare questa rosa a te. So not to anybody else, to you. So that's why we used a te instead of ti. Okay. So instead of saying ti voglio dare questa rosa, we'd say voglio dare questa rosa a te. Okay, see the difference? So we're just putting more emphasis on the indirect object pronoun. And this is only for indirect object pronouns, okay, not for direct object pronouns, just to clarify. How to use indirect object pronouns in a sentence. So let's see here. So in English, we would say, I send the letter to David. Okay, so I send the letter to David is replaced by I send the letter to him. Okay, so we can say to him, or you can say I send him the letter. Both are correct in English. Okay, I send the letter to him, I send him the letter. And in Italian, we have kind of the same thing. So you can either put it here or there, depending on where you want to put the emphasis. So we have Io mando la lettera a Davide is our original sentence. And then if we're using the indirect object pronouns, we can say Io mando la lettera a lui. So I send the letter to him. Or you can say Io gli mando la lettera. Okay, I to him send the letter. Okay, so that's where it can get a little bit confusing between English and Italian, is just the placement of the direct and indirect object pronouns before the verb, because we're not really used to doing that in English. So it does get it takes a little getting used to, but with some practice, you'll get it. Okay, object pronoun word order. How do you know where to put the direct objects in a sentence? So both direct and indirect object pronouns can either be placed before the conjugated verb or attached to the end of an infinitive verb. For example, you can say, Ti posso aiutare? Can I help you? So we put it before the verb, ti posso, before the conjugated verb. So ti posso aiutare? Can I help you? Or you can say posso aiutarti? Can I help you? Okay, so here we're attaching it to the end of the infinitive verb. So you chop off the last E here and you attach the indirect object pronoun or the direct object pronoun, I guess, in this case. So in this case, we are using the direct object pronoun, right? So another example, non lo vuole mangiare. He doesn't want to eat it. So we put it before the conjugated verb vuole. Non lo vuole mangiare. Or you can say non vuole mangiarlo. He doesn't want to eat it. Okay, so we either put it before the conjugated verb or we take off the E and we attach it to the end of the infinitive. Okay, so the end of the infinitive here. So these are the direct object pronouns I've used here. Now let's look at the indirect object pronouns. Lei puoi rispondere. Can you respond to her? So we put it again before the conjugated verb. Lei puoi rispondere. Or you can say puoi risponderle. Can you respond to her? It's the exact same thing. So we're just we're chopping off the E and we're attaching it to the end of the infinitive. Okay? For lo and la, if a word starts with a vowel or a silent H, you can replace the O or A with an apostrophe. When using a direct object pronoun before the auxiliary verb avere, you must change the ending of the past participle to match the direct object in gender and number. Okay, so we have some examples here. Okay, so did you see it? If it is masculine, we're assuming. Lo hai visto. Okay, so you can say lo hai visto. Or you can say l'hai visto. So you see how the ending, the O, okay, is going to correspond with lo. And because it's either lo or la, you can replace the O or A with an apostrophe. So the lo becomes l'hai, okay, L apostrophe H-A-I, visto. Okay, if it's feminine, did you see it? If it's feminine, we have la hai vista, becomes l'hai vista. Okay, so it's the same thing, L apostrophe, and then the A here, the A corresponds with la. Did you see them? Masculine plural would be li hai visti. Okay, so visti, so that corresponds with masculine plural, but you cannot use an apostrophe. So you cannot replace li ai with lai, only if it's lo or la. Okay, and our last example here, did you see them? A feminine plural would be lei hai viste. Okay, so you can see viste, the E here corresponds with lei, but again, you cannot use an apostrophe. Okay, so it just remains like that, lei hai viste. Okay, so I just wanted to make you aware of that, so that you can say that, because most people do that, but you can also just say like that if you want to, lo hai visto, but l'hai visto is very common. Okay, but again, you cannot use the apostrophe with li or lei. Using object pronouns together. Can you use both direct and indirect object pronouns in the same sentence? Of course. Yes, just as when used separately, they are usually placed either before the conjugated verb or attached to an infinitive. Remember to drop the final E first. So it can be attached to the infinitive, a gerund, a command, or the exclamation ecco. So these are just some other things that you can attach it to, okay? For example, ti posso chiamare? Can I call you? So we put it before the conjugated verb, posso. We can say posso chiamarti. Okay, again, attached to the infinitive, but you take off the E first. What order do you put them in? So indirect object pronouns always come before direct object pronouns when used together. The indirect object pronoun also changes form slightly when preceding a direct object pronoun. For example, Giovanni gives the book to me. So we have Giovanni dà il libro a me. So this is correct. You could say it just like this. Giovanni dà il libro a me. Okay. Or you can say Giovanni gives it to me. So you'd be replacing the book with it, or il libro is replaced with lo. Okay. A me, you can move it here. Me lo da. So the indirect object pronoun comes before the direct object pronoun when used together. So Giovanni me lo da. Okay. I just wanted to give you one example here so as not to confuse you too much. So just study this one example until you really understand it. And then, if you have any questions, just post it in the community. But, it's just something that you have to get used to using because we don't really use it like this in English. So it's just a little bit different. Combining object pronouns. So does anything change if you use two pronouns at the same time? Yes. Generally, in the first and second person, the I of the indirect object pronoun changes to an E. The changes are as follows. Okay, so for the indirect object pronoun, if it's used with a direct object pronoun, the me becomes me, the T becomes te, the chi becomes che, and the V becomes ve. Okay, now for li and lei and loro or li, they all become lie. Okay, so they all become lie when you're combining it with a direct object pronoun. For example, again, Luigi gives the book to Paolo. So Luigi dà il libro a Paolo is our original sentence. Luigi gives it to him. Luigi dà lo gli. That is not correct. Okay, that is incorrect. It doesn't even sound right to say it. So you cannot use these like this after the conjugated verb. Doesn't work like that. And this is also incorrect. Okay, I'll show you why in a second. So Luigi gives it to him. You cannot say Luigi lo gli dà. Okay, why? Because in this case, we put the direct object pronoun first, and it doesn't work that way. We have to put the indirect object pronoun first when you're combining them, okay, or when you're using them together. So the lo and the li must reverse their order and then add an E, okay, add an E here, to form lielo. Lielo. That's all one word here. I just put it in two different colors so you can see what I did here. Note only the third person lie combines with direct object pronouns to make one word, lielo. The first and second person pronouns remain as separate words. Okay, so these do not combine, but the indirect object pronoun still comes before the direct object pronoun, but they just do not form one word. Okay, back to our example here. Luigi gives it to him. This is correct. Luigi glielo dà. Okay, so we made it into one word. We combined it into one word because it's a third person singular, and we put it before the conjugated verb. If our sentence was Luigi wants to give it to him, you could also attach it to the end of the infinitive. Okay, so Luigi vuole darglielo. Darglielo. It's hard to say, but it's a correct way to use it. So you just chop off the end chop off the E here from dare, and then you attach glielo. Okay, so glielo da or vuole darglielo. Okay, it's kind of fun to say. So yeah, that's how you do it. Okay. Remember, when both the indirect object and direct object pronouns are used together, the indirect object pronoun always comes first. Okay, so just remember that. The indirect always comes first. How to use object pronouns together. So if our original sentence is, again, I send the letter to David. In English, we have I send the letter to David becomes I send it to him, okay, it being our direct object pronoun, and to him is our indirect object pronoun in English. So I send him it. I send him it. Okay, I send it to him or I send him it. Sounds kind of funny to say that, but it's, we could say it that way. In Italian, we have io mando la lettera a Davide is our original sentence. Io. Okay, again, you don't really need the io, but I'm putting it in here for clarity's sake, just to explain here that this is the same. So io la mando a lui. Okay, so la lettera gets replaced by la. Why? Because it's feminine, singular, third person. Okay, so la mando a lui. Or you can say gliela mando. Okay, gliela mando. So we've combined lie and la to form gliela, and we put it before the conjugated verb, okay, mando, because there's no infinitive in this case, in the sentence. So gliela mando, okay? Okay, you'll get it. If you haven't gotten it up to this point, just keep working at it, and it will eventually make sense, okay? Okay, we are on to quiz number 10, module 2.9, object pronouns. Now there's only 5 questions in this quiz, so I'll go ahead and read each question aloud and all the possible answers, and I'll pause for a few moments to let you try and figure out what the correct answer is before telling you what the right answer is. But if you need more time, just go ahead and pause the video. All right, let's get started. Number 1, vero o falso, true or false? The object pronoun replaces the noun performing the action. The subject pronoun replaces the noun receiving the action. Choose only one best answer. A, vero, or B, falso. Okay, so this one was falso. The subject pronoun replaces the noun performing the action. The object pronoun replaces the noun receiving the action. Number 2, vero o falso, true or false? A direct object pronoun replaces the noun that indirectly receives the action. It answers the questions to whom or for whom. Choose only one best answer. A, vero, or B, falso. Okay, this one was also falso. So a direct object pronoun, un pronome diretto, replaces the noun that directly receives the action. It answers the questions who or what. An indirect object pronoun, un pronome indiretto, replaces the noun that indirectly receives the action. It answers the questions to whom or for whom. Number 3, what type of pronouns are the following? Mi, ti, lo, la, ci, vi, li, le. Choose only one best answer. A, direct object pronouns. B, indirect object pronouns. Or C, subject pronouns. Okay, so these were the direct object pronouns. So the direct object pronouns are me, ti, lo, la, chi, vi, li, le, and the formal versions la and le. You can tell they're formal because they're capitalized when written. The indirect object pronouns are me, ti, li, le, chi, vi, loro, or li, and the formal versions le and loro. Or you can also use a me, a te, a lui, a lei, a noi, a voi, a loro, and the formal versions a lei, a loro. And subject pronouns are io, tu, lui, lei, noi, voi, loro, and the formal versions lei and loro. Okay, number 4. Which of the following is not a correct way to ask, "Can I buy you a coffee?" Choose only one best answer. A. Ti posso comprare un caffè? B. Posso comprarti un caffè? Or C. Posso ti comprare un caffè? Okay, so letter C was the incorrect answer. The object pronoun can be placed either before the conjugated verb, i.e., ti posso comprare, or attached to the infinitive verb after dropping the final e. For example, posso comprarti. They can also be attached to a gerund, a command, or an exclamation, such as eccoti. It's not grammatically correct to place the object pronoun between a conjugated verb and an infinitive verb in a phrase, as in posso ti comprare. And number 5, which of the following is the correct way to say Giuseppe gives it, in this case the car, to him, Fabio, using direct and indirect object pronouns? Choose only one best answer. A. Giuseppe la gli dà. B. Giuseppe dà la gli. Or C. Giuseppe gliela dà. Okay, so letter C was the correct way to say that phrase. So in this case, the direct object was la macchina, which becomes la as a direct object pronoun. The indirect object was Fabio, which becomes gli as an indirect object pronoun. So then we have la and gli, which reverse their order and add an e to form gliela, which goes before the conjugated verb, in this case da, or attached to the end of an infinitive verb, i.e., vuole dargliela, he wants to give it to him. All right, so how did you do? If there's any that you missed or you want to go back and retake the quiz from the start, just go ahead and rewatch the video. But if you're satisfied and you just want to reread some of the answers, I'm just going to scroll over the correct answers here. And if there's any that you want to reread, just go ahead and pause the video. All right, great job.